Well, I guess we can get started. I'd like to thank everyone for coming to this first ITE Wisconsin Safety Council meeting of 2026. We got a good presentation lined up that Dan will introduce, but just a few housekeeping items first. I believe we shoot for 3 to 4 meetings per year, so we will send out more info on that. Next one probably early summer, late spring, somewhere in there, a little after the traffic engineering workshop, and then one later in the year as well. So if anyone has any ideas or would like to speak at those, don't hesitate to reach out to me and Dan and we can get some things lined up for those. But otherwise, I'll hand it off to Dan, who's going to introduce our speakers.
Thanks, Christian. Today we're joined by two individuals from the American Honda Motor Company. I'll introduce them separately, and then they'll walk through their presentation on how they're adopting the safe system approach and several safety projects as they're involved with. So first up, we got Brian Bouch, who's an accomplished automotive safety leader and currently serves as the Director of Safety. In his role, Brian provides strategic direction for all of the North American safety initiatives, driving Honda towards their 2030 vision and its ambitious goal of achieving zero traffic collision fatalities by 2050. He leads a cross-functional effort spanning technology, human behavior, and the broader traffic ecosystem. Brian also has experience as a crash safety department manager, where he managed a team of more than 60 crash safety engineers, overseeing multiple vehicle developments to ensure compliance with safety regulations. Craig Orlin is the Director of State and Local Government Relations at the American Honda Motor Company. He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree, multiple Bachelor of Arts degrees in government and politics from the University of Maryland, College Park. Since 2012, he oversees the company's legislative affairs, advocacy, and public policy efforts before state and local governments. His portfolio includes issues surrounding vehicle safety, zero emission vehicles, consumer privacy, vehicle franchise laws, and cybersecurity. For the past couple of years, Craig has led an industry-wide effort to enact legislation in states to address the proliferation of dangerous counterfeit and non-functional airbags. His efforts have led to 40 states enacting his model legislation. He is also leading an effort to improve recall completion rates in states by engaging with DMV partners and inspection stations to have them provide supplemental notification of open recalls to the consumer. So with that, welcome, Brian and Craig, and I will hand it over to you.
Thanks, Daniel. So I'll start off with just a little bit about Honda, who we are, before handing it over to Brian to dive a little bit more deeply into the safe system approach, and then he'll hand it back. We'll talk a little bit about some policy issues that we hope to work with you guys on in the near future. So with that, just a little bit about Honda's history. We've been in the United States for 65 years, started with a single storefront in California where we were selling motorcycles. Fast forward 65 years, we've grown quite a bit. We've got 30,000 associates here in the U.S. working to build, design, service, and sell a wide range of products. And we have a significant presence in all 50 states, including Wisconsin, which I'll talk about in a second. One of the milestones that we're really proud of occurred last year. A lot of people assume that American Honda is just sort of assembling vehicles here in the United States. That's not true. We're actually just celebrating 50 years of R&D here in America. We've made a lot of great breakthroughs on the environmental side and a lot of really, really impressive things on the safety side that Brian's going to talk about in a little bit. I do also sort of like to remind everyone that everyone thinks of Honda as an automotive company, and that is true. That's a big part of our business. But we are a full mobility company. We are involved in a lot of other products. We make ATVs, side-by-sides, power equipment, engines, boat engines, planes, motorcycles. We're now getting into the micro-mobility space. And again, we want to apply that safety technology to all of these products. And I know micro-mobility is a big issue coming forward. So that's another one that we really look forward to working with you guys on, even though we're going to primarily focus today on the automotive side. But if you have any questions about safety on any of these sort of technologies, please know that we're happy to be a resource for you guys going forward. One of the things that Honda really prides itself on, a lot of people think of us as an international or a foreign automaker, and that couldn't be further from the truth. We are as American as any automaker. In fact, Cars.com does a report every year on the most American vehicles in the United States, and Honda has continually dominated that list. We've got more vehicles in the top 20 than any other automaker. And again, that's a key part of our philosophy, trying to build where we sell and really identify local needs and sourcing. The Midwest is really an important region for Honda. You can see some of just sort of our investment there. I don't want to spend too much time on that. But again, I mentioned before, in Wisconsin specifically, we purchase over $117 million annually from 23 different Wisconsin suppliers. We've got 25 Honda and Acura dealers on the auto side that employ over 1,600 associates. And then we've got 26 power sport dealerships and 189 power equipment retailers in Wisconsin as well. So fairly significant presence there in the Midwest. And for those of you who have been to Marysville in Ohio, you've probably seen our large factories and corporate headquarters. And then sort of one of the last things I want to plug is that Honda's a proud partner of the Olympics and Team USA. My boss signed the biggest check in the history of Honda to sponsor this, so she wants to make sure I'm plugging it every chance we get. We are the official mobility sponsor of the Olympics. With the Winter Olympics kicking off, we're really excited. I know Wisconsin's got some athletes participating in the Winter Games, and that's really a big source of pride for us as a company. From a public policy position, we really pride ourselves on sort of environmental safety leadership and developing a robust workforce. Obviously, we're going to really focus on safety. So I'll turn it over to Brian, but just a couple of things I want to mention. Again, he'll dive into the safe system approach. But one of the things that Honda really prides itself on is sort of our efforts to what we like to say is democratizing safety. So again, a lot of automakers and our competitors might only put some of their advanced safety features on some of their top end vehicles. We really do our best to try to get those technologies not just on our high end Acuras, but on our base level Hondas as well, and make sure that younger drivers are seeing the benefit of those safety features as well. And that's a part of our comprehensive safety approach. So with that, let me toss it over to Brian. I know that's what you guys are most interested in hearing in, and then we'll talk a little bit later about some of the policy issues that we'd love to work with you guys on.
Awesome. Thank you, Craig. And Daniel, thank you for the introduction. Really excited to be here and actually share a different approach than maybe what you would hear from a normal or another automaker talking about only airbag seatbelts technology. We're going to talk on a completely different faction of the safe system approach, and that's the people. And I want to share today a lot of our really exciting initiatives that we've been doing in the people space, how to really change human driving behavior. But just to level set everyone again, you hopefully have heard the philosophy of safety for everyone. It truly is everything that we do. It's grounded in the foundation of our safety, and it's really to protect all road users, not just those in our vehicles or on our motorcycles using our products, but really everyone that shares the road. And as such, we've set a very aggressive but yet noble target by 2050 to have zero traffic collision fatalities involving Honda products. So that's motorcycle and auto by 2050. And that's actually a global target. That's just not a North America target. But we also have a milestone check here now, just in 4 years, by 2030. We want to see 50% reduction in fatalities that we saw in 2020. So 6 years ago, right before COVID hit. And so we know that those vehicles that are on the road today obviously are vehicles, because we build Hondas that last, are 10, 15, 20 years old. So the technology in those units today are much different than the vehicles that we know will be produced out in the 2040, 2050 time range. So human behavior is critical. But to give you an idea, as we look at zero as our ultimate goal, this is all public data, so this is completely okay to share, that in 2023 calendar year, we had about 3,500 people lose their lives on US roadways involved in an automotive crash from a Honda or an Acura. So this is auto only. This does not include our motorcycle. And you can see the breakdown of how the fatalities are happening. 2/3 are inside our car. The remaining are either impacting other vehicles, motorcyclists, and then a big spike that we're seeing in the US right now is what we call vulnerable road users, pedestrians, bicyclists. I'm from Los Angeles, so if you're in the LA area, you can see e-bikes are kind of out of control and everywhere. So we know that that's a big problem, not only with Honda, but with the entire industry as well. And setting the stage for a lot of the initiatives I want to share with you guys is when we look at that data set, about 70% of the fatalities we saw in the calendar year 2023 were vehicles that were 70% were 10 years or older vehicles. So we know, again, a lot of those older vehicles are driven by young drivers, new drivers, and inherently more risky drivers. So while new technology is great in these vehicles here, you can see the fatality rate in blue, which is just number of fatalities versus registered vehicles of that model year, is decreasing, which is great. But we know there's a lot of work to do here, even with a lot of the older vehicles on the road. And what leads a lot of that, and again, Honda is not immune to this, this is an industry problem, is about 60% of the fatalities we saw in Honda and Acura drivers had a risky behavior. And that includes unbelted, speeding, or impairment. We didn't use distraction here because it's grossly underreported, but we know that distracted driving is a huge problem as well. And when we look at occupant age, driver age, and the number of ratio or the risk of those behaviors, you can see that young drivers under the age of 30, mostly 25, continue to lead the way, especially with unbelted and speeding. So as Honda, we've adopted very similar approaches, the safe system approach, but we have a 3-prong approach instead of a 5. We have 3 areas. The first is what we call performance of mobility. This is what I mentioned at the very beginning: airbags, seatbelts, active safety systems, all of the things that you think of typical safety. That's important, that's critical, and the advancements we've made even in the last 10 years have been great. However, we know that that's not going to be enough, but we're going to continue to evolve and advance our technology. The other 2 areas, including this, what we call human ability, this is the human piece, how to change risky driving, how to change risky behavior. And I'll show a detailed initiative that we call Honda Safety Driven that is focusing on school-aged kids in the United States, actually around the globe, to help educate proper behavior in and around vehicles. And I'm really excited to share a lot of those details with you today. And then this third bubble is called the traffic ecosystem. This is exactly why we're here meeting with you today. Is Honda has a big footprint. Honda, as Craig showed, has a lot of products. Our footprint is ginormous, but we can't do it alone. We know we can't do it alone. So collaboration with like-minded partners like yourself, like other OEMs, like other manufacturers, like other government entities, we know that that's going to be takes all of us. It's kind of the 1 + 1 = 3 sort of benefit. So collaboration is key. This is a busy slide, but it really sets the stage for what I want to share today, where we've laid out how to protect the occupants. And it's really to reduce the risk of crash. Then if crashes do happen, and they will, how do we minimize the severity? And so I want to focus today on the education and coaching and training that Honda, which is a car company that has a very high safety leadership legacy, is focusing in on non-technical aspects of occupant safety. And so it's definitely outside our wheelhouse, outside our comfort zone, but we know it's an area and a niche that is needed, especially as we look at our target towards 2050. So I want to cover 3 different areas: the education piece, coaching, and training. And how we look at that is simply, this is vehicle drivers, this is either young occupants, older drivers, is the cost to educate students, and the effectiveness we know goes up as you get from classroom into behind the wheel. And that's what this training is here. But we know that the reach is greater as we get into the classroom. We're able to maybe more cost effectively get into it. What we're using this pyramid for is simply all 3 matter. And we really value all three just as critical. And we'll show you how we envision this working and how it's enabling education, coaching, and training today. So the first is an education program. We are super happy to share that just over 3 years ago, we partnered with Discovery Education, which is a global tech ed company that has over 4.5 million educators just in the United States to help educate all of the students that we're able to reach. And we partnered with them and created a program that we have termed Honda Safety Driven. And I'll show a QR code at the very end, but hondasafetydriven.com. All of the content is free. We intend to keep it free and is taught in the classrooms. And I'll show you extensive details on it next. So as I mentioned, we're in our third year. The first year was getting into the classrooms by creating what we call a virtual field trip. So we've all remember back in the day going physically to somewhere. This was creating a video that we got to our crash facility in Ohio. We showed aspects of seatbelt use and speed and how it's important to not be distracted and of course never drive impaired, really focused on the risky behaviors. And what was beautiful about partnering with Discovery Education is we're able to have everything standards based taught in the classrooms and got credit. So as I mentioned, we taught about physics and momentum. And so a physics teacher, for example, in Madison, Wisconsin, can type in physics, teach a lesson, have a video that supplements it, and then get credit that they've taught that physics lesson in the standards-based education program. So really successful. And again, all of this is 100% free. And we broke down this 30-minute video into different chunks you can see here on the bottom to really hit each different area per the student and for what the teacher wanted to teach. And this is the quick promo.
Join us for a special Discovery Education virtual field trip to the Honda Auto Development Center in Ohio, one of the most innovative crash safety research facilities in the world.
We'll meet the scientists and engineers developing technology to keep drivers, passengers, and even pedestrians on the road safer.
We'll also learn a few simple things all of us can do to help save lives.
The science and behavior of safe driving. It takes all of us.
So you can see that that was launched just about 2.5 years ago, and I'll show you the results here in a second. We built it off of that for year 2, and we created 3 different things. One is a gamified tech teaching tool that we call Crash Course. And I'll show you an example here, but it's getting the kids engaged in a fun manner and teaching proper safety technology and again, a fun, different manner. We then focused again on vulnerable road users because we know that that was an issue and continues to be in the United States. And then we expanded on teaching on the 4 different big risky pillars. Crash Course. So if you have young children like myself, they're on Roblox or Minecraft and building everything. So they love the digital based learning tool. We created a crash simulator that's online, again, completely free. Once you go to hondasafetydriven.com, you could play it, where the students are able to do a mini design of experiments led by the teacher in which they turn on and off different safety features. So they can not wear their seatbelt, they can turn off their electronic stability control, they understand how the autonomous emergency braking systems work, and they actually run a crash test, and it gives you a risk score given the safety technologies that you turned on or off. And then it's educational. So they understand, okay, why did your risk go up when you didn't wear your seatbelt? Well, that makes sense because seatbelts help save lives. We've also added a fun component in there where you can crash on different planets. So you can crash this beautiful Civic Type R on Jupiter. Because again, think about physics, is that the gravity is different on Jupiter, so the momentum's different. The stopping distance is different. You can crash when it's raining and snowing on Jupiter. So it's a really cool interactive game that is then education based and again can teach the students in a really fun manner. I mentioned too, we created a couple different lesson bundles for pedestrian safety video, and then we also made an e-bike scooter video to really help educate on how to be safe on in and around vehicles on the roads. And then finally, we're really excited about this. I geeked out when I was part of this program. For year 3, as Honda is our heritage is racing. And so for year 3, we partnered with both our 2-wheel, our motorcycle professional race team, and our 4-wheel. So we were able to actually partner with, if you're a supercross motocross nerd like myself, the Lawrence brothers, so Jet and Hunter Lawrence, and was actually able to partner with the professionals that race for Honda and understand their impact on how they view safety. Because if you're a young, say middle schooler and you're out dirt bike riding, it's like, well, if I'm looking up to, Jet Lawrence, who's maybe one of the best in the world, and he only thinks about safety, why shouldn't I? So we really use that aspect of bringing the professional racetrack drivers to, the normal behind the wheel training and education. And so really, really successful since we launched this. This was launched just this last October. And I'll give you a quick sneak peek of year 3.
At Honda, racing isn't just a sport, it's a proving ground. A place to push machines to the limits of speed, performance, and safety.
We're doing almost 250 miles an hour at some of the races, so safety is paramount for us.
Driving the innovations and improvements we rely on every day.
There's not many people in the world that spend more time on a motorcycle than us, so I feel like we're very in tune with what is safer, what is better, what's easier to ride.
It's a philosophy instilled by Honda's founder, Soichiro Honda, who said, "Without racing, there is no Honda."
Seeing how much the racing passion has been part of the entire history of Honda, it means a lot to all of us, and we really tried to embody what he was trying to teach everyone and use that as motivation.
Get ready for the next chapter of the Honda and Discovery Education safety-driven series.
We're going as fast as we can around every racetrack, which really means that safety has to be the primary goal.
Meet the experts behind Honda Racing and Power Sports.
Safety can definitely improve performance, because if the rider is confident that their motorcycle isn't going to break or fall apart, then they can push it to its limit.
And learn how safety is just as important as speed on the track and even more important on the road.
That's why we go racing, is so that we can keep on developing ourselves and become better.
So that still gives me goosebumps. It's so cool. So we've launched it. We've then reached out and we have just a very quick initial survey that we're trying to understand the educators and how this is being taught. We've had really good engagement from a student and teacher. We've had really good understanding that the tools and everything that we're teaching is exactly hitting home. And then we started this whole thing on a STEM related, so science, technology, engineering, math, and everything is checking the boxes with a really good NPS score. So all of that being said, we're almost at 1 million students reached, and that was again launching in October of 23. So we expect actually probably either this month, February or March, to be able to hit 1 million students. We're gonna have a huge party at Honda because we're able to touch so many young students before they start changing into the risky drivers. So really getting them early, especially in elementary school. And every program that we've taught or we created has an elementary, a middle, and a high school curriculum. So it's appropriate based on age. Shifting gears quickly, pun intended, to our coaching. So we have a Honda coaching app that is compatible with Honda vehicles and is able to give objective feedback on proper starting, stopping, and turning characteristics of new drivers, and really provide real-time feedback and help those young drivers as they're learning the skills of, okay, how does it feel to not stop as quickly or to increase that, stopping distance or accelerating a little bit more smoothly, and provide that feedback to help support the educational base that they learn, not only getting their driver's license, but also through our Honda Safety Driven program. We know that young drivers continue, this is crashes per million miles traveled in black. You can see young drivers continue to lead the way with number of crashes. And 2/3 of those killed in vehicles are driving older vehicles again, as I showed earlier, between 6 and 15-year-old vehicles, because new drivers usually get the used vehicle. So we've created that coaching app. And again, it gives you really, really good, and I won't completely get into all the details and nerd out on you, but with acceleration, steering, and braking, and help provide not only that subjective feeling that your driving teacher might provide, but objective, actual quantitative data to help teach you. And we feel like this application can really help improve or change, maybe if there's going to go to, say, a performance-based GDL, driver's licensing program, to help support and supplement that activity and that process of getting a license. And so what we're doing actually this year is really trying to expand the use of this application and partnering with potentially insurance companies, driving schools, even high schools. We have actually a couple activations near Torrance, California, which is where our headquarters are, working with the IIHS, which is an independent test facility in Virginia, and really trying to expand the use and implement this technology or this idea into the process of getting driver's license. And then lastly, I'll touch on a driver training program that we have in the Indiana Auto Plant, which is one of the facilities Craig had quickly mentioned. And we have a program that's called START, Safety Training Awareness and Responsibility for Teens, that actually gets young drivers, young teen drivers from the local area around Indianapolis into the vehicle. We actually have a couple Civics that we put this little skid car on that's able to change the friction or the contact patch of the tires to the asphalt and put the students in understeer, oversteer conditions and teach them how to get out of that. It also teaches them how the braking systems work and all of the different components in the vehicle so that they experience it on a safe setting before they get out into the icy conditions that you guys have there in Wisconsin, or potentially as we're here in DC. So really successful program as well. And how we see all of those programs and assets coming together is really in the driver's licensing activity and supplementing that process. So as I shared, we have this Honda Safety Driven program that's elementary through high school based, that our envision is it supplements the driver's licensing course that's, required in some states to get your driver's license. And then we view our coaching app as a good supplement to help when that young driver is either doing the 40, 50 hours that they need to with their parent or guardian before taking the, say, 8 hours of required behind the wheel training with a licensed driving coach, to really help teach and objectively give feedback, quantitative feedback to that driver. And then, as I mentioned, we have another couple of programs, but that START program is really behind the wheel training that isn't to supplement the graduated driver's licensing program, or it is not to change or to overcome, but to supplement. And we feel like that kind of, we call plus alpha, that additional training is really helpful as the students get out in the real world and really understand how risky driving and how a skid feels and how to get out of it. And then the last couple slides, I want to switch gears a little bit into this safe driving bubble and really talk about connected vehicles. And this is actually a project that we just finished, and I'll share you some press releases of this with Ohio DOT, in which it's the vehicle, and it's a perfect safe system example of using the vehicle to help improve infrastructure. And so we have this project that is called Proactive Roadway Maintenance Project. Again, it was with Ohio, that we actually had a 2-year pilot program. We retrofitted 2 Honda CRVs with different sensors to be able to pick up certain road hazards, including understanding pavement striping, potholes. We were able to measure road roughness, as you guys probably can truly appreciate that. Also in Ohio, how rough is that road, and is it unmanageable? Do we need to repair it or repave it? Damaged guardrails. So if there's an impact to a guardrail, should we have to replace that? Another very important one is damaged signs or even missing signs. So especially in a rural setting, if a stop sign is missing or knocked down, the technology that we developed here can say, hey, there should be a stop sign here. It's not here anymore. Alert the DOT in that sense. And then the final one is shoulder drop. So just that drop from pavement to dirt or gravel. And so we were able to develop a system. We worked with a couple different smaller suppliers. We worked at the University of Cincinnati in Ohio, and AI based to be able to teach and learn the vehicle, what it was picking up from both the sensors and then a visual base. It had a camera. You can see a couple of these different pictures in which it would AI and learn. And that feedback, for example, would go to a Department of Transportation associate, and they would be like, no, actually that's tar on the road. That's not a pothole. So that when the vehicle would then see that exact same tar patch, it wouldn't say, hey, that's a pothole. So it really is starting to embrace the large language models or the AI learning. And then we brought all of that information to a dashboard in which the DOT associates, employees could sit and look. This is an example of the Honda vehicles picking up the left or the center line marking, in the blue meaning good, the red meaning not detected or not meeting up to the specification. And as you can imagine from a DOT standpoint, in Ohio, for example, they pave the center line every year, 100%. And so looking at this data, and this is just in Central Ohio around Columbus, you could see that maybe 75% is okay, and maybe they wouldn't have to repave 100% of the center line every year, but maybe 50%. And the cost savings that could be experienced is probably in the millions of dollars by saving on paint and cost. And so my last slide here is we issued a press release actually less than a week ago, last Thursday, and it's been picked up and actually documented by several, both national journalists, so Car and Driver, Autoblog, for example, and then of course around Columbus, Ohio and Cleveland, really talking about this technology. So go out and Google this, but really, really proud of this, looking at how to expand this, not only in the state of Ohio, but other DOTs and then other OEMs, because it honestly doesn't take a lot of vehicles on the road to be able to pick up this information, especially as AI and machine learning gets more and more prevalent. We're able to really help feedback this information to the infrastructure. And that's it. I'll turn it back over to you, Craig, and I think we'll take questions at the end.
Thanks, Brian. And I'll go through this last part quick because we do want to leave a lot of time for questions. But similar to what Brian was saying, Honda very much views safety as a team sport. This isn't something we can do together. And I wanted to share sort of one issue that Daniel mentioned before about how we're working with DMVs to try to improve safety and see if this is something that maybe Wisconsin is open to. So let me just click forward. Oh, sorry. There we go. I think almost everyone here is probably familiar with what a safety recall is, but under federal law, automakers have two sort of obligations when we detect an undue safety defect in our vehicles. The first thing we have to do is notify consumers about that problem, and then we have to provide them with a remedy for the life of the vehicle free of charge. So despite Honda's goal is to fix 100% of our vehicles with an open safety recall, it's an obligation we take incredibly seriously. It's not just sort of a legal obligation for us. We consider it a moral obligation as well. And I'll talk about the struggles in a minute. But despite our best efforts, more than 1 in 5 vehicles on the road today has at least one open safety defect. And that could be anything from airbags to brakes to seat belts. And it's very easy to see how these safety defects don't just jeopardize the risk of the driver, but any passengers, as we're in a ride-sharing community, that expands, as well as other vulnerable road users. So nationwide, there's at least 58 million vehicles with an open recall, and more than 1.2 million vehicles in Wisconsin alone. And as I said, that presents a very real safety defect, safety risk to motorists. So, automakers can't do this alone. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Takata airbag recall. This is the largest, most complicated recall in our industry's history. 13 years later, we're still not at 100%, despite all of the resources that we've thrown at this, all of the national media attention that's come. We have done over 400 million individual outreach attempts to consumers. via everything we can think of, from text messages to carrier pigeons. And again, we still get people who are reluctant to get these fixed, and people who are unaware of this recall. The number one reason recalls go unrepaired is simply still lack of awareness. We're sending 400 million notices out, but if those notices aren't going to the right people, then they're essentially useless. And the real problem we note is that vehicle defects make themselves known later in a vehicle's life. And by that time, especially with Honda vehicles, those vehicles have probably changed hands maybe 2, 3, 4 times. So if I've sold a car to Brian, Brian sells that car to Daniel, Daniel sells that car to one of you guys, nobody is informing the automakers about this. So we're still sending me notifications about these defects, and that's not helpful. Additionally, because communities of color and other disadvantaged groups rely on that used vehicle market for their personal mobility needs, we see a real inequity in safety, which is something that we really want to try to address. So the solution that we've come up with is working with the DMVs. This is the one place where everyone has to regularly register their vehicle. They have regular touch points with all vehicle owners. And what we were originally asking was for DMVs to withhold registration if people weren't getting their recalls fixed. That raised a whole lot of concerns. So all we're asking now is for them to provide a supplemental notice of open recalls to vehicle owners at the various touch points they have. And we have partnered with Carfax as an industry to put together a tool that is free to automate, that is free to the DMVs, that will allow them to automate this process. So again, I'm happy to answer any questions and we can dive into it. But the way it would work is when you send a registration notice out to consumers, it would just have a little notice at the bottom that says your vehicle has at least one open safety defect and you have the right to a free remedy at an authorized dealership. We've done this in a number of states right now: California, Texas. Not a whole lot of things those two states agree on, but this program is one of them. And we've seen a lot of success as a result. People are bringing their vehicles into the state. Maryland was the first state to do it. We identified about 1 million open safety recalls out of the four and a half vehicles that are registered in the state. And within 6 months, we got almost 400,000 of those vehicles fixed, which is a real point of pride for us. So again, a bunch of states have done this. We've got some model language we're happy to share with you guys. We are not looking to shift liability or responsibility. We are happy to sort of indemnify the DMVs, but this is just one of those cases where we need a partner, and some states DMVs are comfortable doing this through a regulatory process. Others, they've asked us to work with the legislature to give them either some funding or some further clearance to work on this. But it's a program we'd really love to sit down with DMVs. We want to be a partner. We don't want to sort of mandate this on you. And when our engineers sort of sit down with your folks, it's been a very smooth process. So with that, I see a couple of questions popping in the chat. So I'll sort of end it there. But if you have any questions for me or Brian, we're happy to take them for the rest of the time. Thanks.
Yeah, Craig or Brian, I assume you guys can see the chat, or do you want me to read the questions to you?
I see them coming in. I can't. Now that I'm not sharing my screen, I can start to see them. But yeah, if you wanted to read them, that would be sort of helpful.
Sure. I guess just it looks like one question was already answered, but I think on one of your first slides you showed some of the crash stats, and there was 7% with a little graphic that might have been ATV, UTV, but looks like it's motorcycle fatalities.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it's 7% of Honda and Acura impacting. Could be another Honda motorcycle, but motorcycle 7% of fatalities. Does not include ATVs or side by sides or anything like that.
And just while we're on the ATV, UTV thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't say one of our big policy issues is trying to make sure that those products are not allowed to be used on road. A lot of states are now taking action that they say it's got 4 wheels, an engine, it's $30,000. This is basically a Civic. And as a company that builds both Civics and ATVs, I can tell you that these things are not appropriate for road use. We're seeing a lot of injuries and fatalities as a result of that inappropriate use, and we're working very hard to try to make sure that those vehicles stay off road.
Yeah, and then Daniel, that the second question there about older vehicles, and of course, as I mentioned, the technology in the say 2000 Civic versus the technology in the 2025 Civic are greatly different, just with advancements of airbags, technology, crumple zones, high strength steel, active safety features. So the way that we honestly like to look at it, though, is that all the vehicles are safe. They're just different levels of safety. And as say a 2000 Civic would maybe come in contact and crash with a 2025 Civic, at Honda, our design and crash philosophies have not changed. It is all about safety for everyone and how to help absorb that energy. So we view, of course, there's different challenges, different airbag technology, again, in the older vehicles. So it's a kind of an apples and oranges. It's definitely something that we need to consider for sure, especially as younger drivers drive these older used vehicles. But it's definitely something that we are considering how to change, especially risky behavior.
And then I didn't see the next question that actually gets into the ATV use, but again, this is one where we're happy to work with you guys. And again, I'm not sure if that legislation provides any authority for you guys to limit the roads, maybe limit this to daytime driving or anything like that. But again, our philosophy is that these vehicles are built and designed to be used off-road. They lack a lot of the standard safety equipment that's on automobiles that allow them to travel safety. And we're not just talking about crumple zones and airbags and full doors. We're talking about things as simple as lights and mirrors and making sure that these products can be seen. And again, their tires are incredibly low pressure, so that can lead to blowout on hot roads. So again, we are doing everything we can to sort of educate our consumers and our dealers that even though these laws are out there and a lot of the states allow them sort of just to go from place to place, like farming locations or very limited use, that is not a smart or safe idea.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. I think, I guess for some information on our ATV, UTV, we've been dealing with some of that, an epidemic almost, with kind of different practices from counties and local communities because, and then Randy pointed out 67 of our 72 counties have some level of ATV to UTV routes on our roadways. And that's basically because the locals individually can identify routes for the use of that. So a lot of our recreational areas are opening all their roads to those, whether they own the road or not, or manage the roadway or not. I guess I saw, I think, Joe, you had a question. Maybe we'll hit you first and then go back to some of these ones coming up in the chat.
Sure. No, I started typing it in, but that one of the 5 safe system elements, and it's one that's getting a lot of attention at this, particularly in urban areas, is dealing with safe speeds. And just wondering if you guys want to, I know it was in the slides, but you didn't touch on it, what Honda or the industry in general are doing to regulate speeding. So you have the hard ISAs, which is like the fleet vehicles where they can't speed, to things like alarms and dash displays showing like the speed limit. Like what is Honda doing to address speeding?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I kind of deliberately didn't talk about technology, but it's a great question. We are actively, very heavily looking at different technologies to help prevent speeding. We actually gave a talk just recently here in DC at the government industry meeting that how can we help use technology to get that feedback properly to the driver that they're speeding. There's people that excessively speed on purpose. There's people that actually don't realize that they're speeding, and it's a balance, and that feedback from vehicle to occupant or driver is critical. We know that Europe, for example, has enacted very aggressive speed limiting requirements, and the pushback from customer acceptance is very, very harsh. So we're definitely balancing how to do that. we're working with other manufacturers, and actually the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety is looking at implementing some sort of performance-based testing in which measures the different ISA or speed limiting technologies and how to properly help, minimize speeding. We know different states have enacted that, repeat serial speeders have then a required, speed limiter on their vehicle, a little bit similar to what you talked about from the fleet. But to answer your question long-windedly, Honda is definitely actively involved in how to use vehicle technology to curb this risky behavior. So yes. Good question.
Thanks. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
No, I was just reading the next one. I think Natalie had asked too about the students being able to separate or kind of discern the difference between driving 100 miles an hour on the racetrack versus the roads. No, the way that we laid out the programs, hopefully that is very clear that these professionals, and actually, if you're a IndyCar fan, Scott Dixon, we were able to sit down with him and have conversations of, if a professional, very one of the best in the world, says that driving on a racetrack, he said, honest to God, is safer than driving out in the road. So of course they're going 200 miles an hour, but he's like, everyone knows the rules. They're going the same direction. They're not drinking. They're wearing their seatbelt. They're not on their phones. So it's like everything is much, much clearer versus, intersections and stoplights and merging. And so he's like, it's almost safer to drive on the racetrack than out in the real world. But we've hopefully designed our programs to really kind of separate that and just use the professionals as, what their message is, to be able to bring it down to these young drivers and really have them understand. And then John, you had asked a good question about the coaching app. I will tease this by saying today, the current Honda coaching app is only compatible with certain model years of Honda and Acura vehicles. I'm going to say that again today. There might be some sort of future change in which it is available across all vehicles. So I'll kind of tease that at this moment. And then the second question, John, was a really good one as far as the nomenclature of all of these safety features. And it's key on how do we educate it as an industry. There's a couple different consortiums or partnerships that we are involved with that helps normalize and kind of standardize the naming conventions of these. So I think it's important educating the consumers, especially young drivers, on the features, what they do, but how they work and why you shouldn't disable them. I always kind of joke that if we can explain it so that my parents don't call me and they're like, hey, what was this beeping? It kept beeping at me and I kept hitting buttons and turning off stuff. I was like, Mom, that's it. You're the exact person that we need to get to. So how do we explain it so that, the grandparents and parents can understand and like, oh, I shouldn't turn off that, lane keep or lane centering sort of technology. So education's huge.
It looks like the last one that we haven't touched on to some extent is from James. Curious if there are conversations about vehicle design, particularly related to size, mass, and direct vision.
Yes, and yes. That it's back to kind of what we talked about in the education program. STEM related or physics, right? The heavier vehicle, physics is always going to win, and physics is always there. One thing that we've done, and again back to our design criteria, is we haven't wavered from what we call our ACE body structure, which stands for Advanced Compatibility Engineering, and it's the front components of all of our vehicles, from the old Honda Fit, if you remember that when we used to build that, to now our Acura MDX. The front design hasn't changed, and why we've done that is to help minimize and mitigate injury to the occupants in the striking vehicle and the vehicles that's been struck, is to absorb that energy. And we know obviously with EVs, electric vehicles, they're heavier, those batteries are heavier, but we've actually done extensive studies on crash characteristics, crash energy, crash kinematics on a electric vehicle versus an ICE vehicle and a gas engine vehicle. And the energy absorption is not much different. And so helping educate the consumers that sure, these vehicles are heavy, but the kinematics and the different crash characteristics are much different. But we also know that with the adoption of active safety features, like what we have is Honda Sensing now 360 or AccuWatch 360, to help minimize that impact crash. So if you can detect and even scrub off 5 miles an hour, that energy into the crash is going to be much less. So all of those, though, size, mass, definitely vision, A-pillar thickness and visibility are deep considerations as we design every vehicle. Any other questions? These are great.
Well, if not, and while folks are maybe typing some in, let me just say, I appreciate the opportunity for us to share this with you. This is really just sort of scratching the surface. We could do this for days instead of just 40 minutes. So if you're interested in more information, by all means, please feel free to reach out to me or Brian. You can go to our website, hondainamerica.com. We have a lot of information there about our environmental and safety work. And again, it's our goal to be sort of a resource for you guys. As I was saying, I see some questions coming in. So I'll stop. But yeah, we want to be a resource to you guys. And again, we very much view safety as a team sport. We need partners, and you guys are among the best partners we could have. So with that, I'll yield to the next questions that are coming in. Gotta scroll up.
Sorry, I'm catching up here.
Yeah, so
variety
I'm
of crash
sorry,
dummies. Yeah, great, Jennifer, great question. There's a limited number of types of dummies that right now that are just industry standards. We've actually utilized the last several years, last 8-10 years, is virtual crash testing. So there's as many physical crash tests that we do for verification of a development. We do 10, 15-fold number of virtual crash tests. And in those virtual crash tests, we're able to design safety features for any occupant, shape or size, height, width, you name it. And we're able to understand how the different restraint systems, airbags, seatbelts, and those sort of things interact with all sizes and different varieties of occupants. So not a one size fits all. I think the next question is the initiatives interact with self-driving technology. It's a very good question. As we know, the industry is going to say level 3 and even level 4. How we interact with those autonomous vehicles, self-driving vehicles versus say, just normal vehicles, since Honda Civics will be on the road forever. That's critical. And one of the things that we know that the government has recently started to look at is enacting a federal standard framework so that we can deploy these autonomous vehicles across all states and not just have a state by state. So that's huge, and really understand how to, regulation plays a huge part of that. But it's definitely deeply being considered as we advance towards zero fatalities. How have you? So one of the things, the next question is getting this into the teachers and educators' hands. Partnering with Discovery Education is exactly that method. They actually are in the classroom already. They have what they call a DEN, which is a Discovery Education network. Teachers are part of that. They literally type in physics and boom, the Honda Safety Driven program pops up. So they're able, the reason we partnered with them is they're already in the classrooms and they're able to do that.
And then on top of that, we're trying to promote this via social media, working with policymakers, working with other trusted stakeholders as well, just trying to get it out there as best we can. But yeah, just to supplement Brian's a little.
Yep. And I put the link there too in the chat.
Oh, yep. The next question, is there any concern that all the technology safety features that drivers feel they are less responsible to be good drivers and pay attention? Absolutely. That is one of the biggest struggles we face. That's probably one of the biggest reasons we hear when people say they don't wear seatbelts. My car's got airbags, my car's got adaptive cruise control. I'm not going to get into an accident. And obviously that is something that we as an industry are working to dispel, and that all of these technologies work together to provide safety. And again, crash avoidance and crash survival go hand in hand, and we are not at a place where one of them surpasses another. But I don't know if Brian has anything he wants to add there.
No, it's a perfect answer, and it's just getting education. So the reason that if you've ever heard of SRS, it's supplemental restraint system. So that supplemental is a huge part of wear your seatbelt. Your seatbelt's number one, but your airbag is your SRS, your supplemental restraint system. So how to teach them and educate them is key.
And then this is a good one for Brian. Has Honda taken steps to reduce or limit vehicle weight growth as part of its efforts to improve safety for non-vehicle road users, given that rising vehicle weights increase crash severity?
Extensive steps. Yes, every development, we constantly try to reduce weight. And back to one of the questions earlier about visibility. Visibility is huge, especially when we talk about or vulnerable road users, pedestrian, bicyclists. And so we absolutely do that. We've taken huge advancements in high strength steel. We utilize, for example, aluminum, so that, and because we know aluminum's a lot lighter, less mass than steel, to help improve weight. And one of that is fuel economy, but also stopping distance, momentum, crash forces, those sort of things are affected by that. So we constantly take steps to reduce it.
All right, we have time for maybe one more question if something comes in. Just give it a second or so. All right, are Honda Key trucks and vans coming to American dealers?
I've sat in a lot of meetings about this one. Long answer, no. That's not really something that the American market is really hungry for. That's sort of just become a really one of the political things I never thought we would be talking about. But we've done smaller cars, and to some of the previous questions, Americans really are in the market for larger vehicles, and again, we need to figure out how to make those as safe as possible. But there's a number of safety and regulatory hurdles to bring those there, and I don't envision them going away overnight.
All right, thank you. All right, well, I just want to say thank you to Brian and Craig for presenting today. If you guys are willing to share those slides, please feel free to send me your slides, and I'll try to get those to all the attendees, and we'll publish this recording to our YouTube playlist probably in the next week or two. But yeah, I guess thank you. I don't know if you have anything else to say, Christian.
No, just want to thank Brian and Craig again just for the wonderful presentation. A lot of interest here. So, and to all the members, me and Dan will reach out in the coming months about our next meeting. So stay tuned for that.
Awesome. Yeah, great. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.